If you clicked on this video, you may be wondering as well, why did the Liberal Party in Australia choose Sussan Ley to be their leader, as opposed to some of the other people in the Liberal Party? Now, conservative parties are typically conservative based on three different things, and they may draw in three different types of people. People who are fiscally conservative, socially conservative, or those who prefer nationalism. It doesn't mean that everybody who prefers nationalism is going to be fiscally conservative or vice versa with any of those three things. But it does mean that most of the policies and the people inside of the Conservative Party are going to encompass values, morals, or policies that align with this. And before anybody comes at me in the comment sections because I don't have an Australian accent, I am an Australian citizen, and I think that gives me the right, just like others, to speak about Australian politics. But I don't want to be divisive. I don't want to look for inadequacies or character flaws in politicians or anybody in general. I just want to have rational discussion. I want to use critical thinking and analyze some of the things that Australians want based on surveys and what our political parties offer. Now, there's a lot that could be unpacked in this topic. I'm not going to touch on it all, but I do want to go into a little bit more about conservatism before I start talking about Sussan Ley and more specifically the Liberal Party and their choice. Now, as I mentioned, conservatism is going to have those three different facets to it. So being fiscally conservative would look like reducing government spending. It's going to have less government. It's going to lower taxes, not just for the lower or middle class, but for everybody. That they don't believe that people should just be taxed at extraordinary amounts. And now it's also going to encompass having a strong economy based on capitalist growth, with free markets. So being fiscally conservative is really going to involve those things. Now, a lot of this may be more of the upper middle or the upper class because of their higher incomes. They don't want to be taxed more. Now, those that fall under the more social conservatism, they're going to focus on traditional family structures and the moral values that typically surround those. Now, it's going to include things like the nuclear family, like a mother, a father, and children. Sometimes it can have religious aspects to it, so Christianity, Catholicism, sometimes even Islam, Judaism. I would say probably Christianity, Catholicism, and Islam would be more conservative overall. But yeah, it's going to do that. It may look like, from a policy perspective, banning pornography or OnlyFans as opposed to banning X or free speech. And then the latter, so nationalism. Now, some other countries who strongly participate in this, really just this pride for their nation and their people, are going to be like China, Japan. There are a lot of Asian countries that participate in that. Nigeria. These are countries that are predominantly their culture. So the majority of people in China are Chinese people. Same Japan, Nigeria, and some of the others I listed. Other things are going to be, like in regards to that, is they're going to focus on having stricter immigration laws or the type of people. And by type of people, it's like wanting highly skilled workers. So it would be like the doctors, lawyers, engineers, people high up in the tech world or corporations. They're going to want those type of people to immigrate to their country as opposed to lower earning individuals. It'll also look like having a strong national defense, so supporting military and whatnot. So it's basically focusing on the nation. It's focusing on putting your nation first as opposed to foreign entities. But if you wanted to have bullet points on what a typical conservative party is, not just in Australia, but kind of around the world, you're going to see this repeated over and over again. It's going to look like limiting government to reduce corruption, and so people can keep more of their income. It can be protection of personal liberties against government interference, or even just being able to have more property rights, personal rights, that people can't steal your things. So a lot of it focuses on it's just being able to protect what you have, what you own, and even yourself, kind of your autonomy. It will be maintaining law and order to ensure safety. So that's why with conservative parties, you typically see them not only heavily support the military, but also law enforcement. They focus more on prevention as opposed to justice afterwards. So they want to prevent crime from happening, other than, just kind of see what happens or take things on a whim and then try to, work around the legal system after bad things happen. The other thing is they support the preservation of their specific culture, not just at the time, but more historically. Now, I find this one really interesting because in Australia, we had the British come here and to Australia, and I know that's quite a soft spot for many people, but we also have the Australian Aboriginals. Now, if we want to preserve Aboriginal culture, then to me it would make most sense not to dilute the culture. So what that means is if you allow mass migration inside of Australia from different nations, that eventually it will not only dilute the British or the colonialist culture, if you want to call it that, but it will also further dilute the Aboriginal culture. So the more cultures, the more of a melting pot it becomes, the more the Aboriginal culture will be diluted. So in some instances, or if you want to think of it this way, that the more you actually limit migration, the more you preserve Aboriginal culture. Because, well, if Aboriginals would have had, at the time that the British came here, if they did have closed borders, if they had passports, if they had anything that kind of blocks foreigners from coming without them verifying it or agreeing to it, that wouldn't have happened. So in some ways, to preserve culture, having stricter immigration is a very beneficial thing. On the other side of the political spectrum from conservatism is progressive values. And this is going to be the Labour Party in Australia. Now, that encompasses 3 different facets from the Conservative Party. Those would include things like social justice, economic reform, and environmental protection. Now, when it comes to social justice, that these political parties, and we do see the Labour Party doing this, they're going to promote policies that surround like equality and systemic injustices, things that benefit women primarily, or people in the LGBTQ community, or other ethnicities, or immigrants, or people in poverty, or those kind of at the lower end of the socioeconomic realm. Economic reform this is one of the things between like conservative parties and progressive. They both promote stronger economies. You're gonna hear a lot of the same talking points, but what they mean or how they want to get there are very different. So economic reform from the progressive side is going to look like reducing income inequality. They're going to promote kind of the companies that need to be 50% female and 50% male, or they'll only hire contracts, or they only use contractors or companies that abide by these laws. It's also going to look like increasing minimum wage every couple years or every 5 years, or even just having progressive taxation, which isn't always necessarily a progressive thing, but you're going to see more of an incline in that progressive taxation. For environmental protection, I think that one's clear. This is going to look like combating climate change, sustainability, making sure that solar is used in as many places as possible. Those are going to be kind of 3 different facets as opposed to the conservative. There's been a dramatic shift in the amount of people voting for one nation more recently, which I think signals that the Australian people are not feeling heard, that their primary concerns are not being addressed by either the Liberal Party, and for some through the Labour Party as well, and of course some of the other parties. But the Liberal Party, I think many of those people have gone over to one nation. Now, what I did next, I went to research what are some of the top concerns from Australians. I know I could probably list them off the top of my head, but I wanted to get actual sources. So the first one, I went to Flinders University survey. There were 30,000 Australians that participated in December of 2024. Now, the top 3 concerns, 65% of Australians were concerned with cost of living, 37% were concerned about housing costs and affordability, and 32% were concerned about crime and community safety. Now, there was also a Real Concerns report of 2025, which is a little bit more recent, where 52% of Australians were concerned about financial issues and the cost of living, and 91% of people were concerned about cost of living, expenses, utilities, and even the global economy. So from what I gathered of this, that it looks like people's primary concerns are surrounding not having a strong economy. Having a strong economy means that their superannuation is going to grow, that their shares are going to grow, that they're able to have a stable job where they can earn enough money to have a family, to buy a house, to do some of the things they want. So there's a lot of concern surrounding very basic parts of living that promote a better life quality. I took note from the Real Concerns report of 2025 that baby boomers, so those are people born between 1946 and 1964, their biggest concerns were having adequate health care and the environment. Gen Z, people born between 1997 and 2012, their biggest concerns were unemployment and job security. And Gen Y, or millennials, people born between 81 and 1996, their biggest concerns were cost of living and house affordability. Now, I think the millennials are kind of in the middle of this. They're kind of the predominant earning power. They're the biggest ones probably in the workforce right now, people having families or wanting to have families. So I think that's probably why they're getting that. But as many Australians say, a lot of the baby boomers, well, they own homes, they've got their superannuation, they've done their work. So it makes sense that they want to keep their health care intact. They want the bulk billing. They want the benefits of it, and they don't, because they don't have to worry about cost of living. They may be more inclined to worry about the environment and other factors because they don't have financial stress. But what's interesting overall in those surveys is it's very different from what you may hear on the mainstream media, or even if you open up social media, that there's not as many people, especially in the younger generations. I'm not talking about like the 16, 17, 18-year-old generation, but kind of that middle-aged portion of the population. They're not as concerned with climate change and environmental degradation or having access to health care. Their primary concern is just to live. It is cost of living. It's having a house. That if you don't have a house or you're always bouncing around, it's very difficult to have stability in a family, or much less yourself. And I have to point this out, that from those surveys, women and men varied a little bit differently, kind of in what they said and what upset them most about government or some of the things going on in the world. So both men and women were upset or concerned about cost of living, but women said that they were concerned about the pressures behind cost of living, as well as domestic violence. Now, historically, women typically got married. They had their families around. They may have had brothers and sisters, so they would have had more of a community, so to speak. And I think when they don't have that now, not in the numbers they used to. So you have a lot of independent women. They're in the workforce. They don't have anybody to rely on. And the cost of living, it has gone up significantly. So naturally that would increase a lot of the pressures behind it. They have nobody to rely on. Now, domestic violence, it's far too big of a topic to get in here. But men have always taken to more direct forms of aggression as opposed to indirect. So for men, direct aggression would be like physical aggression. When they're upset, when they're unhappy, that they're more likely to hit somebody, where women are more likely to spread gossip and rumors and so on and whatnot. That's not any type of excuse for domestic violence. I think it's horrible that it happens. But another large factor in why men are not able to harness their aggression is that when men don't have their fathers around growing up, when they don't have good male role models. And I think if you're seeing this, that women are actually scared enough to say this in surveys, that it's one of their biggest concerns, domestic violence, or the way that men treat them. I think that's saying something here within Australia, that how many men do we actually have helping raise the children, whether it's single parent situations, or if women don't want their children to see their dad, or like something is happening in the homes when they're younger, where they never develop this ability to harness their aggression, and they're taking it out on relationships. Now, if we go over to like what men are concerned about, trust in government and global crises. Now, historically, men are the ones to go to war, that they're the ones to provide. So it makes sense that they're more concerned with what's going on globally. I think, and you may think this is a very sexist view, but in a lot of households, men take care of the finances. Men are the main providers. They are the breadwinners. Not in every instance, but generally speaking, because of various factors. But what I got in this is men are wanting to protect in some sense. They're wanting to be able to trust their government. They're wanting, whether it's themselves or their families, to be protected. They don't want to go to war. They're concerned with the things going on in the world. So it was just a few other points that I picked up based on those surveys. All right, now into the topic of Sussan Ley and the Liberal Party, or why they would have chosen her. How is it part of their strategy, if they even had one? Now, a little bit about Sussan, and I got this from her website as well as Wikipedia, so I hope everything is correct. If it's not, that is not my intention. And again, it's not to demoralize her or try to rip her character apart. I think she's a normal woman. I think she's done a lot. She seems to be intelligent. But I am going to be pressing on whether she should be in her position right now as leader of the Liberal Party. Now, she was born in Nigeria. She grew up in the United Arab Emirates, immigrated to Australia at 13 years old. Her parents were British, so that's why they were traveling. I think they were in the military. Went to school in the UK, Queensland, and around Canberra. She got a Bachelor's of Economics and a Master's of Taxation Law and Accounting. Well done, Sussan. I would never make it through taxation law because I think that has to be one of the most boring topics in the world. She also got her commercial pilot's license. She flew Cessnas. Her website said that the Cessna 206 was her favorite, which is pretty cool. She was an air traffic controller in Sydney and Melbourne. She did aerial stock mustering in the outback, was a shed hand or shearer's cook. That she did her university actually after having her first child, so across a span of 10 years, which is not easy, and they believe she had 3 children altogether. And then she got a job at the ATO, became director, and then entered politics. She's had a few negative things kind of said about her. She changed her name. She added an extra S after reading about numerology. She was young. I think I'll give her that. Sometimes people do, they do strange things when they're young. I don't know if she'd do that now. In January of 2017, she apparently had her travel expenses examined after buying a Gold Coast apartment while on official business in Queensland. She made 27 government-funded trips to the Gold Coast, but she did pay back 4 of those, and she resigned afterwards because of some of the, obviously some of the anger regarding politicians and their travel expenses and having trips at the expense of the taxpayer. But she came back the following year. Now, the website says that she's a moderate faction of the Liberal Party, so she's much more moderate, which I think we see, and that which is part of the confusion, which is why I brought up what a Conservative Party is typically supposed to be at the beginning of this video. She identifies as a feminist. Feminist can vary based on who is saying it. I don't know, it could be first or second wave where they just wanted voting rights and to be able to have very basic things, or it could be fourth wave feminism, which has gone into some very different things. So she didn't explicitly say what type of feminist she identifies as. She voted that she was pro for same-sex marriage. She supported the Palestinian state and then reversed her position later. She also wanted to ban the export of live sheep, but also reversed her position afterwards. So now she's okay with the exporting of live sheep. She has an interest in Middle Eastern politics. I can see that. Well, she grew up there. Fitness and cycling, relaxing back, whatever that means, and true crime thrillers. Looks like her primary focuses are going to be on like rural and regional issues, decentralization, supporting farmers, homegrown food security, balancing water, improving rural health. She's backed the e-safety commissioner, I think so, that was surrounding X and some of the social media things coming out, but I don't think she's a big fan of X. I think this week her and Anthony Albanese were both a bit upset about all the AI generated bikini photos and various things that AI was putting them in. So I think Grok and X kind of took the fall for much of that. She will not debate migration levels after the Bondi Beach terrorist attack, which I'll discuss, but I just wanted to say that, her reason was that it's a sensitive time, so she doesn't want to do that or escalate things further. She also called for the formation of an anti-Semitism task force, and she said we should reduce permanent migration from 180,000 to 140,000. But I don't think she wants to talk about that because it's a sensitive topic. So I picked up on a few things from that when I was kind of analyzing it and going through her life. Now, there's nothing inherently bad about her. She hasn't necessarily done anything wrong. I think like any other human, she's probably made some mistakes. But when we're looking for a leader, and more specifically a political leader, somebody to represent the entire nation, which is another thing that I thought was really interesting. When I went to the Liberal Party website, right across the front of their website, it says, "We will respect, reflect, and represent modern Australia," which I thought was interesting. Modern Australia. Well, what is modern Australia? Does that mean that anything historically, anything in the past is just kind of thrown away? Do you throw away that culture? Do you throw away some of the British influence or some of the Greek or Lebanese or Italian influence? Do you throw away Aboriginal influence? What is modern Australia? It doesn't say anything else around that. So the Liberal Party wants to reflect and represent modern Australia, whatever that is. And when it comes to leaders, we need people who speak with authority, people who hold their ground, people who can articulate and communicate what they're thinking and their policies, where they don't have to have notes. They can go up to a podium and they can talk to their people. They can talk to foreign national leaders that that when they go into a boardroom or a conference or a meeting with somebody, that they can hold their ground. And unfortunately, I don't see that in either Anthony Albanese or Sussan Ley. These are not people with natural authority where people just gravitate to them naturally. Now, we're entrusting these people to speak with others like Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping. And if they can't speak to their own people, if they can't go on whether it's a news media conference, a press conference, or even just on long form discussions, much less debates, like if they can't do those things, how well do you think they're doing on the national playing field? And if that's how other leaders and people see you, that you have a leader who's stumbling and bumbling and they can't get around and they just say the same talking points over and over, that's going to reflect the Australian population. And it's something you need to think about when you elect a leader. So one of the reasons I also mentioned Sussan Ley's past and some of her background and kind of things she's done throughout her life is because I want to highlight that a leader needs to have an extreme amount of stability in their life. When they were younger, it's almost like you want them to know where they're going and where they're going to end up. You want them to have much of the same views and values throughout their life. And there's been a little bit of back and forth. She's already a very, very moderate person where I think she may align more with the Labour Party, that perhaps she has a little bit of that fiscal conservatism to her, but I didn't really get that when it came to being more of a nationalist or some of the social policies surrounding the nuclear family or traditional values or maintaining kind of original Australian or Aboriginal culture. I just didn't see that. When I looked at it, it's kind of like she seemed to hop all over the place a little bit, not really sure what she wanted to do. Looked like she had some interest in aviation and a little bit in the rural communities, but again, it's not really speaking to the Australian people, even in some of the things that she enjoys or her life, that it doesn't speak to cost of living. It doesn't speak to some of the economic policies that I think we need. It doesn't speak of stronger government or national security or crime or many of the things that I think Australians, based on those surveys, are concerned about. That her website kind of what she's voiced, it's not speaking that. And I think that's reflecting very clearly in the polls, which leads me to One Nation, because One Nation has surged recently. Not just people coming from the Liberal Party, but I think people coming from the Labour Party and potentially other parties as well. And I went to Pauline Hanson's website. I went to the One Nation website, and I'm going to share a few things that I found on there. When I go to the One Nation website, the first thing you notice is it's very well put together. It is done properly. If you go to Sussan Ley's website or the Liberal Party's website, you'll see what I'm talking about. They need to be redone. They're not professional. They're not organized. It looks like a mess. I mean, it looks like the actual party. You can see what's happened to their party based on their website. But when you go to the One Nation one, it's really well done. It says Pauline Hanson, she launched her One Nation political party in 1997. There's a little bit of history about it. And it says, we're a party that stands for Australia and Australian values. We defend our constitution and stand up against global agendas for the individual rights and fundamental freedoms of all Australians. It's putting people before politics and continuing to fight for Australia and its citizens. I don't think there's anything negative about that. I think generally people want to uphold their culture. I think the Australian people, there's a lot of people who have immigrated from different places, but they still appreciate Australian culture. They came here for a specific reason. So it's not like she's saying only people born in Australia, which is, I think a lot of the reason that many people have come over to her is when you go to her policies, she's talking about things that are relevant to those surveys, what Australians are concerned about. Everything from family tax policies to make things a bit fairer, to not utilize Medicare and childcare subsidies and the government and NDIS near as much as people are, which is probably contributing to higher taxation or the need for higher taxation in the future. Go to her website. There's too many to list in regards to the policies and things that she talks about, but everything from immigration to medical cannabis to lowering prices for households, businesses, and industries to cost of living measures, family law and child support. I think that's a win for men, that she doesn't want men to basically fund their ex-partners, just the child. Jobs and infrastructure, free speech policy, slashing government waste. I think there's a lot of things on there that are not necessarily outlandish to this point for a lot of Australians. Again, when people are in survival, they don't care near as much about the party leader. They care about what they're trying to implement. And sometimes that's gotten people into terrible situations. Communism and heavily socialist societies where a dictator, somebody has said all these things and made promises to do the wrong thing. But now Australia is a democratic country. We've got some socialist safety nets, but definitely a capitalist nation that utilizes the free market. And I think a lot of people, they're turning to One Nation because of this. There's no leadership in the Liberal Party. Actually, when you go to the Liberal website and you go to team, I have this pulled up right now, and you kind of go through some of the people that are in this team, that you're going to notice, disability, National Disability Insurance Scheme, what some of the environment. It's just, you're not getting conservative vibes from the website, from the people, what they stand for. I think the only one, and I'm not sure he's actually in, I think he's Liberal, Andrew Hastie. Andrew Hastie, actually, I could do another video on that. I think he should have been, he should be the leader of the Liberal Party. If the Liberal Party wants to revive themselves, if they want to use strategy, he's a nice looking man. He's in a decent age range where he can relate to some of the younger people as well as the older people. He's a family man. He's got stability. I believe he was in the Australian Special Forces, which means that he's able to work within a team in very dangerous environments, as well as by himself. That he's I think that's an ideal candidate. He's educated. He has conservative values. I think he's been kind of ousted because of having conservative values in a conservative party, which makes no sense. But no, I think if the Liberal Party wants to revive themselves, if they want to be a conservative party, if they want to have a chance against One Nation and their rise, then I think you need to put somebody like Andrew Hastie in place. I'm hesitant to say that because one nation policies are doing well, and I don't think that just one person in the Liberal Party alone will make a big difference. It's kind of like you need to get rid of a lot of people within it and kind of start over from scratch. That's where they're at right now. Thank you for listening today. Much of this was just observational, what I had seen kind of from reading some things, some surveys, what's going on, to understand why the Liberal Party would put Sussan Ley in place. Like why has the Liberal Party turned into more of a Labour Party, or the Uni Party as it's referred to often, to understand a bit of that. And I think what I saw was just there's no strategy, that the people who have positions in power inside of the Liberal Party, that they're not operating as a team. They're not, they're not operating as one, that they don't have a goal, they don't have structure from within the organization. And to be honest, even for a conservative person, I think it would be dangerous to put somebody in the Liberal Party in a position of power because of what we see. They're not showing the skill or the dedication or the willingness to make any change, to make meaningful change, and which is why One Nation is surging ahead in terms of people who predominantly vote conservative. I think even people who may be more moderate in the middle, that's why they've largely probably gone to the Labour side, because they don't see leadership, they don't see things happening in the Liberal Party that would result in any meaningful change, and I can't blame them. So if you have any thoughts on this, constructive thoughts, not just complaining, have some constructive thoughts. Who do you think would be a good contender to lead the Liberal Party instead? Why do you think they put Sussan Ley in place? And do you think One Nation will come out stronger in the next election and that the momentum will be kept up? I'd love to hear in the comment section. If you're a curious person and if you'd like to know more about human behavior, the thoughts behind those behaviors and why we do the things we do and how they impact society, like and follow my channel, and I'll see you next time.